From the Grand Hotel in Point Clear, Alabama, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal's special coverage of the Business Council of Alabama Governmental Affairs Conference. Each year, the state's top political and business leaders gather here at the Grand for a series of meetings and presentations about how to promote business-friendly policies in the legislature and in Congress. Capitol Journal was given special access to this year's conference. Here's some sights and sounds from this year's BCA.
Last year, at this very conference, I challenged y'all to join me and my cabinet in refocusing our efforts so that more of those help-wanted signs come down. This past session, I was proud to join a bipartisan group of legislators in signing the Working for Alabama bill package. From majorly reforming our state's workforce programs to establishing the child care tax credit, this legislation will certainly help us and all of you move the needle when it comes to workforce needs.
At BCA, we're all about supporting Alabama businesses because we understand they're more than just office buildings and factories. They're made up of hardworking Alabamians. Businesses need a strong workforce, and workers need strong businesses. Friends, it really is that simple. That's why working for Alabama was our top priority, to enhance our workforce and ensure that their voices are heard.
As part of this year's BCA conference, members of Alabama's congressional delegation had a panel discussion about what's going on in D.C., why it matters for Alabama, and how they work together through a gridlocked Washington, D.C.
The appropriations process is always a difficult bills to pass. There's 12 appropriation bills out there that have to be passed, and I always remind people those are 12 bills that we have to pass. Congress can do nothing else, but they have to pass those 12 appropriation bills because that's what keeps all the departments of government functioning. And if one of those doesn't pass, then part of our government is not operating. We're a little ahead of schedule, or we have been. We've passed all 12 of our appropriation bills on the House side. I'm going to defer to Katie on that a little bit. Maybe they're a little bit behind us on there.
I knew that was coming.
But I say that because, but we've only passed 5 on the floor, and we still have 12 to go. Now remember, the new year starts on October 1st, or the new fiscal year starts on October 1st. And so here we are approaching mid-August, and we still have only passed 5 in the House. We still have 7 to go, so we still have a lot of work to do.
We meet once a month as a delegation, and so have us in-state meeting. It's been really great. Our dean is Adderholt. I hope that the state of Alabama appreciates the fact that being bipartisan as a delegation has its advantages. I want to publicly say, while I sit on Ways and Means, I know that I can go to Adderholt, I can go to Jerry Carl, I can go to Katie to really advance those appropriation projects that I want to in my district. And I'd like to think that if they had anything with trade or with taxation, that we can do the same. So I really hope you all appreciate the fact that, because I know I do, that that we do try to function in a bipartisan way for the best, for the betterment of our state.
This year's conference also featured some nationally recognized pollsters who shared some of their survey data about the presidential race, House and Senate races, and just what's at stake in this big election coming up in November.
The last survey I did in June, we had Donald Trump up by 5 points over Kamala Harris. The last survey we did about 10 days ago, Donald Trump is up by 2 points. This is an oversimplification, but basically the race is pretty similar to where it was right before that first debate. But if you look at it, you see it, independent voters, Donald Trump's up by 1 point. But if you look at this, I look at the Trump campaign still being on offense because we're up by 1 point with independents. By the way, he did not win. We did not win with independents back in 2016. 18% of the African American vote. And that was one of the other things I noticed about those polls. Donald Trump's still getting in the mid-teens among black voters, May not sound like a lot, but that makes it very difficult for Kamala Harris and the Democrats to win. And you see that big gender difference. If you're married, most married women, especially with kids, actually vote for Donald Trump and the Republicans. But it's those single women, a lot of younger single women, they vote overwhelmingly for the Democrats, and a lot of older senior women. And that's one of the differences between the shakeup and the race now. We're actually seeing Donald Trump run a little bit better among seniors. Kamala Harris is doing better. She's bringing in more, especially female black voters than what than what Joe Biden was doing. And also, we have Donald Trump actually ahead in the suburbs, 48 to 44, and he's up by 4. We ran behind by about double digits in the suburbs back in the 2020 elections.
I think another Trump advantage is the solidified base. He's always had a solidified base, and I think that there's a chance that even the unfortunate and horrendous assassination attempt on him could galvanize voters even more in his favor. But I also think that Trump benefits from what I will call kind of Trump amnesia. There's been some articles written about this, but essentially we live in a nation that so often is undergoing these pendulum swings where we pick one president, we pick the other. We've had chamber control switch from cycle to cycle. And I think for a lot of voters, they forget that a lot of swing voters, let's just be honest, whether they voted for Trump or not, there are a set of voters that were tired of him and the Twitter account from 4 years ago. I think he benefits from the fact that he's not in office, and we see that when we compare, hey, how do you compare a Biden presidency versus a Trump presidency? You can see that difference in polling. Now, talk about Kamala. I mean, there's been I really want to tell you that in a lot of these key states, there have been seismic shifts, and it's because she's re-energized the base among Democrats. And what does that mean? It means that a lot of Democratic polls, just like you see nationally, are coming back a couple of points better. But I think what it also means is it has a potential of changing the electorate. Now, that's like one of the hardest things that Jim and I do, is trying to predict what the electorate's exactly going to look like. The trends usually hold over time, but as we look at, the excitement, we've seen about a 5 to 7 point uptick in Democratic enthusiasm, when you look at national polling. So, strong donor engagement, strong base excitement has really been what Kamala has brought to the table. The Biden campaign that then sort of became the Harris campaign is the first campaign in history to reach $1 billion as fast as they did. I think they reached that last week. So we're also talking about record spending. And as I think about kind of how I'm modeling the electorate this November, I think that there is the potential in some of these states to have higher turnout than what we even saw in 2020, just based on some of the excitement that we're seeing in polling.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal here at the Grand Hotel at the Business Council of Alabama's annual Governmental Affairs Conference. I'm joined by the CEO of the Business Council of Alabama, Helena Duncan, and also the CEO of Regions Financial Corporation, Mr. John Turner. Thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for having us here at the conference. It's a real treat for us. Well, how do you think it's gone so far? I mean, it seems like didn't you say it was the most widely attended BCA ever?
Absolutely. We had 770 registrants this year, which was about 150 more than last year, which we thought we were at capacity. But because of what's happening in Alabama, you can see in the room, people are energized and they're interested in being a part of our process. So we're very excited. Historical day for us.
Mr. Turner, you're the chairman of the BCA right now. You're the CEO of one of the largest companies in Alabama, a nationally significant, and you have a role very much nationally. Why is it important for your company to be involved in the BCA and involved in the government space in Alabama?
Yeah. The Business Council of Alabama is a great way for businesses to get involved, to try to help shape policy that supports job growth, economic development. It helps create an environment where businesses can be successful. And so our business is good or bad based upon how good the economy is. It's a real reflection of the economy. And so we think it's important to have a say, to have a voice in trying to shape policy that, again, supports job growth, that supports economic expansion, and really proud of the work that the Business Council has done in conjunction with our legislative leadership, with our executive branch, to bring about some real positive policy initiatives that are, I think, establishing the groundwork for some really meaningful improvement in Alabama over the next decade.
Yeah, we've been talking to some of those legislative leaders about that. Y'all made some news today in terms of getting involved politically or kind of upping the game politically. Talk about this announcement and what we should take away from it.
So Campaign 2026 is what we announced today. We in Alabama, and we will talk collectively because we understand that our strategy, you'll hear a lot of us talking about public-private partnerships, collaborations, alignment. Well, Campaign 2026 is much of the same. We are at a pivotal point in our state where there will be a lot of open seats in the next election, and we are not willing to just allow it to be happenstance. We work with what we have. So we want to be more proactive, and we want to make sure that we're protecting the business environment that we've created. You heard the numbers this morning. We're growing. We're being recognized as being a, business-friendly state. We are not just satisfied with being 5 or 6 in those numbers. We want to be number 1. And so in order to do that, we have to continue our journey, continue our vision, continue our mission. And so, but that starts with the people that we send to the State House, and you know that. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be very proactive in running the analytics, sourcing candidates, revisiting records, and making sure that everybody understands exactly what it means to be a pro-business candidate. We will all be operating on the same definition. So we look forward to that. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take our sponsors and businesses that support our mission to get behind this and help it. It's going to cost a lot of money to get this done. It's a big election. I think we talked about yesterday, the biggest comparison is 2010. Mm-hmm. As far
another big election.
Big election.
Yeah.
And so there's no other comparison close, but in our minds, this one will exceed that because of the number of open seats that will happen in 2026. So we're going to be very proactive. Our chairman, our executive committee, our board, they're very much behind it, and they understand the importance of what we're doing.
You're right. 2026 is a huge election. You're going to have a U.S. Senate seat, all the constitutional officers, all of the legislature. Yes. So it's one of those, seismic, potentially kind of things.
Absolutely.
But it intrigues me what you're talking about, because you say pro-business. You didn't say Republican. You didn't say Democrat. This is not. It doesn't sound like a partisan thing very much. Just That's more right. In terms of, do you support where we're going? Support the business community, not necessarily a party ideology. I think that's significant.
It is significant, Todd. I think what we're saying, and along with our message all weekend, we just talked about public-private. We talked about working together, getting aligned. That is not about a party. That's about people that not only are focusing on the business community, but what's best for our state. Mm-hmm. These practices are good for us to continue to move our state. Yes, we're going to protect the business community. We're going to protect jobs. We're going to do that. We're going to define what business-friendly really means. However, everything that's aligning is best for the state. And so we were putting down party lines. We're putting down, our own individual ideas or egos, mm-hmm. for the lack of a better word. And we're going to focus on what's important for this state. We have made a lot of progress, but all of it is for naught if the right people are not walking in that state house in 2026.
Yeah, I would just add, growing jobs, growing businesses, helping support the growth in businesses, developing workforce development programs that give people an opportunity to continue to expand their horizons and improve their quality of life through new opportunities. Those are not partisan issues. Those are about how do we make Alabama better, and that's what we support.
I'm curious also because banking is such a huge industry, lots of regulations. I know they're different state to state, a lot from the federal government. So what would you say about Alabama's regulatory environment when it comes to banking and financial institutions in terms of, Do the laws always need to be updated, or is that kind of what y'all are tracking?
Well, it continues to evolve. There are 96 banks that are headquartered in Alabama, and those 96 banks hold about $214 billion in assets.
Okay.
They're spread across our state. They're range from large banks like Regions to small community banks. We're all focused on providing capital to help businesses grow. We're focused on supporting consumers, providing advice and guidance to help people manage their finances and have more confidence in the way that they think about how they manage their business. I do think that because it's a complex business and that regulation is important, we're fortunate to have a very good banking department here led by Mike Hill and Trebo Reed, who've been around a long time, and I think they do a great job. We have a very sound and secure banking system in Alabama, and I think we benefit from that because those banks are able to then, again, lend into their communities to help support businesses, which then helps create jobs and helps improve incomes and quality of life. So it's, I think we're fortunate.
With confidence, lending with confidence, banking with confidence. I wanted to get to that because we just had this task force meeting, I guess 2 weeks ago, about the blockchain issue with cryptocurrency. I got to be honest, I don't completely understand all of it. I'm learning.
I don't either, by the way.
I was going to say, you're in a big number. You're in a big number.
Well, I had Amanda Sen on, at the Securities Commission just to sort of go through it. But she made some good points in terms of, look, this is, we regulate banks for a reason, to protect consumers from fraud and things like that. And so the state is now exploring what needs to happen in terms of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Again, to make sure that consumers are protected. What's your perspective on this from one of the leaders in the banking industry?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think about them very differently. So blockchain is a distributed ledger. We think that it will have some real value and application over time. The use cases associated with it are still developing. We're not using blockchain at Regions today. Some of the largest banks in the country are, but it's to be determined how helpful those distributed ledgers are in terms of protecting people's privacy, protecting information, securing transactions, allowing us to compile lots of data and do it expeditiously. Those are all benefits that come with blockchain. Cryptocurrency is another thing, and from my perspective, I don't really understand the fascination with it. Frankly,
there really is. There's like this buzz.
It is. I don't completely understand this notion that it's a store of value. I disagree with that. I think it's supported by people's confidence in it today, but just as soon as they have confidence, they can lose confidence in it. And so what really underpins the value of cryptocurrency? I do think it's potentially because there's very limited transparency, no transparency, frankly, and how it's used. There is some concern that it's being used for illicit purposes occasionally, and we know that to be a fact as a matter of practice. So I do think that it does require regulation from a banking perspective. We are, to your point, highly regulated. We would expect that if someone's going to hold an individual's assets in the form of cryptocurrency, they should also be regulated. They should have requirements to know their customers, just as we do. So I very much believe and support the Alabama Banking Department and the Alabama Securities Commission in conjunction with the legislative delegation looking at what is appropriate regulation. I think we'll have to address it on a national level as well. But I encourage us to continue to try to better understand it, if you will, and make sure that we're protecting consumers who are investing in it as an asset class.
An even playing field. So
Absolutely. We advocate for an even playing field.
Well, Helena, this is a fascinating conversation,
Yes.
but maybe just kind of one example of the conversations that happen at an organization like BCA.
Absolutely.
Diverse businesses, large businesses, small businesses. You take all types.
We do.
So are you pleased with the conference this year? Can we call it a success?
No, we're going to put it in the book and call it a success. No, absolutely. I think we shared a lot of great information Very heavy on the political side, but that's what we wanted, and that's what we'll see for the next couple of years. But very pleased.
Well, we're going to follow up with you on that because we're tracking the 26th election, and we'll definitely be following up. Thanks again for letting us come to the conference. There's no single weekend where everybody, all the political and business leadership are gathered in one place. So it's important for us to be a part of
Absolutely.
it. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for
thank
being
y'all.
here. Yes.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the online video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capital Journal here at the Grand Hotel. We're at the Business Council of Alabama's annual Governmental Affairs Conference. I'm joined by U.S. Senator Katie Britt. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be in front of your audience.
Well, this is interesting because we're here at BCA. You were the former
That's right.
CEO or President CEO of the Business Council of Alabama.
right.
That was your job before you ran for Senate. So that's kind of interesting. And now you're speaking as a panelist from our federal delegation. What's that like?
Yeah, so obviously having put on one of these conferences, there's so much work that goes into it. I mean, so many people making sure that everything lines up and that you've got good material to put in front of people, good panels, engaging opportunities. And so to see today, really appreciated the hard work that went into it, and I know what it feels like when it's a success. And I think this morning was certainly a success, and a lot of people got a lot out of the different panels that were on stage.
Is it less stressful as a participant?
Yeah, absolutely. You're not worried about, okay, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Is the timing of this? Where is that person? So it's nice to just be able to enjoy a cup of coffee, enjoy the material in front of you, and get to be here in that way.
And also take about 1 million selfies. I saw the line. One of the things y'all talked about was childcare.
Yes.
And the workforce development, the workforce issue is kind of this watchword now, a huge issue. But you have legislation dealing with this from the federal level. Talk about childcare, how that impacts the issue of workforce, and maybe as a barrier to the workforce.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've tried to do since I, stepped foot on the Senate floor is find things that I'm passionate about, and that I, uniquely have a window into. I mean, I am the only Republican female with school-age kids in the entire United States Senate. So whether it's speaking directly to the youth mental health crisis, or looking at social media, or even taking a look at what it's like, to be a mom, I kind of reflected on my own challenges trying to find childcare, both affordability and accessibility. I knew that Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, had been a real leader for this in his state when he was governor, and did some bold things. And so one of the first conversations I had when I got to the Senate was sitting down with Tim and saying, I want us to find a pathway forward on this, a common sense solution where we can affect people and affect this in a positive way. So we're working together on that. You referenced it when it comes to workforce shortages that we have. We have them all across our state. When you look at the economic impact of the child care crisis, it's about $122 billion economic impact a year. I look at it as a mom myself, and I think about when we had 2 small children and we were writing that check for our child care, it felt like we were writing a check for college. When you look at the fact that Alabama is a more rural state, with 55 out of 67 of our counties being rural, trying to figure out the accessibility angle of this too is important. So we approached it in a way of saying, let's take a look at the child development or the child and dependent care tax credits, decoupled those from what they have the DCAP, and really tried to make it more accessible and more user friendly. Additionally, taking a look at, as we expanded those things, and try to incentivize employers to help in this area as well, moving those tax credits up for businesses up from $150,000, this is the 45F provision, to $500,000 a year, and then also allowing small businesses. You know this from our conversations. So A small business, I believe, is the heartbeat of America. Every one of our main streets, all of our communities. And so finding a way for small businesses to be able to participate so they can pool their resources up to $600,000. So we looked at that, and then we also have a separate provision, a separate piece of legislation that takes a look at how we can create and sustain an even greater a workforce there for childcare. So it approaches it in multiple different ways. It also allows those people that don't have a tax burden to actually get a refund check. It's the first of its kind in that regard as well. So we're excited about the comprehensive nature of it. There'll be a lot of discussion moving forward, particularly in the next Congress, about tax cuts and all of those types of things. And so Tim Kaine and I wanted to make sure that we had this critical issue right in front of our colleagues so that we can help get some traction and hopefully do some good things.
I was going to ask, I mean, it's been introduced, you did the rollout, but maybe not likely going to pass this year. Is this looking at next year, next Congress?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So start to build momentum, and you remember from your time there, that's exactly what you have to do. Figure out, get people on board, and as we take a look at the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and what is expiring, there'll be a larger conversation that occurs within both the Senate and the House. And so knowing that this is such a critical issue, and you think about, if you want to have the opportunity to stay home with your children, and you do, I want you to have that opportunity. But if accessibility or affordability is an impediment to you re-entering the workforce, I want to take that off the table. This disproportionately affects women, and we want to make sure that we create strong communities, and to me that starts right here with a bill like this.
Interesting, because you mentioned working with Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia. It seems to be kind of like a tradition in the Senate that you'll find an issue between Republicans and Democrats to work on together.
Yeah.
I think that's significant in a time that's so polarized like we are in. Talk about why that's so important and why that's been a tradition in the U.S. Senate.
Absolutely. So, Todd, thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it too, because a lot of people, just want to talk about some of the hot button issues.
Red meat.
Right. And not the things that we are doing where we're coming together, where when we share a common goal, I believe we have an obligation to the people we serve to get in a room and try to figure out a path forward. And on this, whether it's childcare or whether it's the maternal mortality crisis, and me getting in a room with Senator LaFonza Butler and saying, how can we fix this? We know that, Alabama has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the nation. It disproportionately affects Black women. This is 2024. It shouldn't be like this at this point. And so whether it's that or social media or whatnot, in the Senate, you have to get 60 votes to get something passed. And so finding a good partner, finding common ground, creating a bipartisan solution is essential to moving it forward. And truly, that's what our country is founded on, is figuring out, how do we move these things forward in a way that's productive for American citizens. And so on the issues where I share a common goal with someone across the aisle, I'll continue to get in a room and try to figure out a pathway forward. And I think I have multiple examples of doing that already, and certainly we'll do that so we can do good things for Alabama and the nation.
So that sounds really optimistic. Should we be more optimistic than we maybe might be if we just pay attention to Twitter and just cable news or whatever? Is it in the room when it's the United States Senate? Do y'all get along more than maybe meets the eye when we just watch Twitter or whatever?
Yeah, and I think that, and that's one thing that I try to talk very openly about, whether it's in hearings or in interviews like this, is partnerships that you create in order to do good things. And so I think you see a lot of that in the Senate, but unfortunately, that's not what gets people clicks. We're in a world where, some people in the media believe it's their job to sell the news versus tell the news. And so telling the news is maybe not as interesting as selling the news. And so I think I am going to keep speaking directly into this. And look, I'm going to fight for our values and fight for our people. And on some of those things, I obviously disagree very strongly with people across the aisle. And I speak directly into those consistently as well. But where we share this common ground, where we can find consensus and actually move things forward, we just passed COSA. It's a social media bill there in the Senate. Knowing that, we look at where our children are today, knowing that we've got to put up some guardrails to help them be able to succeed. Those things are important. So we're going to keep doing it. You should be more hopeful. There are certainly things where we don't share a common goal, and you see those consistently on Twitter. But I do think where we do, Americans should be hopeful because there are good people in the room trying to find solutions to common problems that are really happening in people's everyday life, or issues even that are happening in our communities. So Congresswoman Terry Sewell and I have worked together consistently to help Selma and other areas in the region, whether it's flood risk mitigation and all types of things. So we are working together. I wish that story got told more because I think it would allow the American people to exhale, and it would give them some hope about what's possible in the future.
The bridge. The
Yes.
bridge in Bayway. I know it's not a direct appropriation, it's a grant and all that, but I know you worked this. Take me behind the scenes. We've read the press releases, we've seen the announcement, we've seen all the. Take me behind the scenes. How does this happen in terms of getting the largest federal grant the state of Alabama has ever seen like this? $550 million to build the Mobile River Bridge in Bayway.
Yeah, so I would say probably two things offhand. A lot of people doing a lot of things, and then also never giving up. So if you rewind back to this has been a project I've been working on as a staffer during my time at BCA, and now obviously as a United States Senator. Consistently, when people get turned down for opportunities, you kind of sort of see the momentum dissipate. On this one, though, the players kept coming back to the table. There was great collaboration between local, state, and federal leaders. And we kept asking questions. What was different about their application than ours? What do we need to strengthen? How can we be better? And continued to keep applying and pushing forward and hoping for a different result. A lot of people don't have that level of tenacity. You have to give it to this community, the state, and our federal leaders for continuing to work that process. Additionally, I would say in all of that, building relationships within these different departments and different agencies to kind of have those conversations. People have to want to help you, and you've got to make sure that you put forth the best project. So we had moments of asking questions, moments of changing different things on there. Obviously, Governor Ivey did a tremendous job. ALDOT did a tremendous job. John Cooper worked this. You look down at the local level, Sandy Stimson has been working on this, tirelessly. Obviously, both the MPO in Mobile and Baldwin County coming together to find a solution. You look at our federal leaders. I was proud to continue to lead the letters on this, continue to lead the effort on this, and really lean into that and the necessity of this. You cannot get from Texas to Florida without coming right through I-10. And so knowing what this meant, we've been diligent about trying to be visionary, and I'm going to keep doing that in the United States Senate. You saw Senator Shelby do it with the deepening and widening of the port. As that port has continued to grow, 2017 it was named the fastest growing container port in the nation. Obviously, and you also have people commuting back and forth. You also have those traveling to visit others and come visit other places. There's a continual strain that's placed on this. So if we want to take full advantage of all that's in front of us, making sure that we were able to widen this was just critically important to continued growth. So I'm excited for what it means for commerce. I'm excited for what it means, obviously, just for the local communities here. And then you also think in the unfortunate event of some type of natural disaster, the ability to move more quickly and safely across the space. So this took a lot of diligence and a lot of people doing a lot of things, and I was honored to continue to push this project forward and be a member of the team.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. We're going to come back to Mobile and talk about the bridge, talk about the port, talk about the deepening and widening of the dredging. But look, I know you got to go. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal here at the Grand Hotel. I'm joined by Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for coming on Capital Journal. How's your conference so far?
Yeah, conference good. I just got in, late last night. Enjoyed the sessions this morning, hearing about the polling data. Hearing about what our congressional delegation's doing, and the great work BCA's doing just for economic development, for just job recruitment, really just for the business climate. Right, I'm very bullish on Alabama, and great to be here. Always good to be on Capital Journal.
Look, let's talk about you said you got in late last night. You had some flight delays. You're coming from San Diego, where the Hunt King Fellowship was. This is part of the Hunt Institute. I'm really curious about this, your involvement in this organization. It's about education, some best practices from around the country. What have you taken away from your time as a part of the Hunt Institute?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a great thing. Two former governors, one Republican, one Democrat, started it. It's bipartisan, and just really talks about everything from pre-K to K through 12 to community colleges to higher ed. But one of the things that I was so proud of Alabama is they bring in national experts in all these different areas. Gina Ross has spoke before on pre-K, but they were talking about workforce, and they said right now Alabama is doing more innovative and creative solutions to workforce than any state in the country. Right, and I was kind of blown away, right? That wasn't me saying that. That was one of the independent speakers that came in. And so I think when you look at some of the stuff we've done, last couple of years on the workforce side, on getting people job ready, right, we're doing a lot of things right. I think on the pre-K part, right, I think we're the national leader on pre-K. Making sure like getting students ready to read on grade level in third grade, right? There's some things we've done on that. And so I was encouraged. One of the things, talked about higher ed, making sure we keep that affordable. Also about community colleges, dual enrollment things. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we talked about, right? It's almost like getting you're known as a fellow after you get finished, but wow, I mean, I feel like I was back in college, just sitting there. And, it's interesting to hear what other states are doing, kind of what the data is showing on that. And so it was a great opportunity. I'm finished with that now. But really enjoyed being a part of that, just learning. And look, there's some things I don't agree with that they talked about. There's some I do, but I think it's a great way to solve problems. One of the things that I'm working on trying to create a plan for the future is how do we target our inner cities in Alabama, Mobile, Montgomery, Birmingham, Huntsville, right? That, in some areas, some of those cities, they don't have some of the best schools, right? And so what is a plan to potentially fix that? So that's something we'll be rolling out sometime in the next 6 to 12 months.
I don't want to get back to that, but let's talk about workforce, because that really was kind of the watchword of this last legislative session. You were part of this Working for Alabama coalition. You did quite a bit of research. You had this big commission report. A lot of that got passed in terms of legislation and all that. Of course, you passed the bills, but then they have to be implemented. So, so how do you think it's going in terms of those new laws being implemented? Because you're talking about kind of a transformation of the state's workforce development platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's from the top down. I mean, hats off to the governor's office. I mean, right, our job is kind of research, and a lot of this stuff's common sense, right? Like, okay, let's train students for jobs that we're going to need instead of training them, necessarily to get ready for college and the ACT. But the governor's office has done a great job on implementation. Our office isn't involved in that. She's, leader of the executive branch, and her team has done a great job. Also, Dr. Mackey's doing a good job of getting this done. So I've got full confidence that they're going to get this stuff, that we got passed, in place, and, it's going to start impacting, children's lives, our students' lives, and then the best part is, businesses are going to have a great qualified workforce to hire from. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. It's part of it's about removing barriers, right? We've got y'all did this study about, okay, maybe COVID has something to do with it. Maybe some people left the workforce over COVID and just haven't returned for one reason or another. And so identifying those barriers and using government entities and some private sector entities to help remove those barriers. Do you think we can actually move the needle on that?
Oh yeah, I think one of the things, talk about removing barriers, I think one of the largest barriers, right, is, child care. And so we have a child care tax credit now that's going to be in place in our state. And, when that actually, families start, feeling the benefits of not having to pay for child care, right, that's going to be a huge difference maker. And you talk about getting people back into the workforce. Maybe somebody's trying to decide, hey, I just had children, can I work? Can I afford it? Because this is expensive to live right now. That's one of the things I took out of polling, is that inflation's real. Right now, they were throwing out numbers 15, 20%, right, of cost of goods have gone up. And so I think, from our standpoint, we've got to train people. It's one of the things I learned too. I mean, for 21st century jobs that pay well, right? And so that's really what I think, a lot of emphasis that I want to make sure we do is like our high school students Like, I feel like we fail as a state if we're not getting them trained for a job or trained for further education to make sure they can get a, great paying job. So I think that's important. But I think, you talk about, stuff that's going to have an impact right off the bat. I mean, child care is going to be, something that I think is going to be a game changer. And when I talk to industry, that's here, they love that. When I talk to companies, they love that they can offer that to their employees now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I spoke with Senator Britt about the same thing on the federal level, that they're doing some things. All right, well, I have to ask you, you mentioned the future. There was that John Sharp article in AL.com speculating whether or not you might pursue the governor's office. Everybody kind of assumes that you are.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What's your decision process? 2026 will be here before you know it.
Yeah, I mean, so I've told you this before. That's the only office I would run for, right? I mean, so I'm term limited as lieutenant governor. Governor Ivey's term limited, so there's going to be a vacancy in the governor's office. I enjoy solving problems. It's been fun, right? You think about just the incentive programs, getting to do that and get that. And we did all the research on that, right? I mean, for working for Alabama, for the jobs, everything we're doing on the workforce side, right? I mean, that's been a lot of fun getting to research and get that implemented. I mean, the grocery tax cut to help families. I mean, so I enjoy helping people, solving problems, and I think my background in the executive branch certainly think I could, roll into governor and do a great job there. The key is having good people around you, right? No matter what it is, whether it's business or government, and we would do that. I think for me, as far as decision-making process, right now I'm focused on doing a great job as lieutenant governor and continuing to solve problems. And then I think, probably realistically, I think next year sometime, February, March, people are going to have to start making decisions, including myself. We've got one thing that's unique, I'm like Senator Britt, right? I have younger children, and so our boys are freshmen in high school. My daughter is in 7th grade, and so obviously I still want to continue to be a good dad. But our family believes in, public service and believes you got one life to make a difference. So, I think even though, it's tough to serve and also have young children, I also think it's possible, and, we all believe in that, and we'll make a decision in the family sometime, next year.
Governor, thanks for coming on the show. I hope you've had a good conference, at least an abbreviated one.
Sure.
And we'll look forward to seeing you back in Montgomery.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate what you do, Todd. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal here from the Grand Hotel. And joining me next is Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming on.
It's good to be here, Todd. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here at BCA annually, one of the most widely attended events by the legislature. I noticed plenty of House members are here. Y'all are well represented. What do y'all get out of a conference like this?
Well, I think this is one of the ones in the state's probably one of our biggest ones and one of the most important ones, because we kind of learn what the economy's doing through the business leaders across the state, and having them come in this year, certainly with working for Alabama, creating a public-private partnership has been very good for Alabama. And I noticed we were ranked just in the last couple of weeks one of the most friendliest states to do business in, and continue to improve that. So having those conversations and networking amongst business leaders across the state is very important to the growth of our state.
Really jumped up in the rankings, like a big jump just 1 year, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, one of the workforce/economic initiatives from this last session was the SEEDS Act. You had a lot to do with this.
Right.
It has to do with helping localities develop their local industrial sites. We kind of ran short of those a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we're seeing that really, you passed the bill,
right,
but it's got to be implemented. We're finally starting to see some fruits of that. Are you pleased with what you're seeing so far?
I'm excited about that. I think, one of the things we talked about when we sunsetted the first piece of incentives, and when we were able to look back at it, that's one of the things we brought back with the SEEDS Act, and to see what's going on across this state with the funding that was made available, because it's matching money. So we put $30 million in. I think there's been $37 million matched. So we're almost up to the $70 million of money that's been used on industrial sites that hadn't been used. So I think it's so important. Certainly it's impacted my district and every district across the state. So I really think that could be a difference maker. And, due to the success that we've had in the state, let's be honest, we've run low on industrial sites. So this has been very impactful, very quick. And, I'm excited to see where we go forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask you about the Southern Legislative Conference. We're at West Virginia this year, but
Right.
we're on deck, and you're on deck as chairman, right?
Right.
So, it's going to be in Birmingham.
It is.
That'll be, I guess, about a year from now. What did y'all see in West Virginia that maybe, getting ideas and maybe want to do things differently, but what goes into planning something like that?
Oh, well, it's been already, the planning started over a year, so it'll be over a year in the making. One of the things when, I had served, SLC I think is one of the strongest associations in the country. And, it's a 15 member states in the Southeast, and being able to network with those House and Senate members and leadership and try to find out what's going on in the South is hugely important to us. And I've served as chairman of committees and as vice chair last year, and being asked to serve as chairman of the organization is a big deal. And my thing, and what I want people to take away from it, first of all, it brings a huge impact to our state from the economy standpoint, because we've got to have available some 2,500 rooms. But the second thing is, I want people to see we're in New Alabama. With the growth that we've seen, I've talked about it on your show, with the automobile industry, with the shipping and commercial airlines, and with technology, it's just been amazing at the growth we've had in Alabama. And I think it's good for people to see, we're in New Alabama. We are moving in a direction that's positive for the people of our state and for the South as far as that goes. So
Absolutely.
it takes a lot of time and effort, but our team is working already and will continue to do that. I think they meet weekly, and so our staff does a great job, and this is just the torch that they've picked up.
Well, yeah, and we're looking forward to that. It's a chance to showcase Alabama to our southern neighbors, right?
It absolutely is, without question. Of course, SLC is based in Atlanta, so their staff is on board. So we've got the opportunity as chairman now to use that staff to help us, and they've done it a few times. So that certainly will be beneficial to us. But it does help us showcase what we're doing and some things that's going on in our state.
It's too bad the new State House won't be done. Otherwise, we could show that off.
Yeah, the thing about it is, don't be surprised if there's not a visit to Montgomery and some of that.
Yeah.
So I think we're looking at some different parts of the state. And the good thing about Birmingham is that it's close enough that with a bus trip, we can tour 3 or 4 locations. I think people's going to be surprised in.
Well, look, I know it's just August, but the legislative session will be here before we know it. I know that there have been budget hearings going on. What kind of preparations are underway? Are y'all already having discussions about what the agenda is going to look like going in, because it starts in February?
Right. Yeah, we talk about it. You talk about it with members all the time about what they'd like to see us do and some things that's going on. We won't caucus until November. So after the caucus meeting, we'll have a better idea. One of the things we've been working on from my office, and have had a number of members work on it from Jefferson and Mobile counties and different parts of the state, is, we want to try to help fix the crime problem. I think that's a big issue in our state, and our growth has been tremendous. If you look over the last 7 years, we've created over 87,000 jobs with almost a $50 billion worth of investment. But we've got to make it where it's safe for our metropolitan areas, and we want to work with those people in those areas to try to make that happen. So I think it's a plan that we can achieve, and look forward to working with them and other organizations for that to be the case.
Well, it will be an interesting session. It always is. Look, we'll let you get back to enjoying the conference, and everybody's walking around,
Sure.
and I guess we'll see you around BCA. But thanks again for stopping in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
Alabama Public Television is your place for free professional development, curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and more. Explore resources at aptv.org/education.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal here at the Grand Hotel at the Business Council of Alabama's Governmental Affairs Conference. Joining me next is President Pro Tem of the Alabama Senate, Greg Reed. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Todd, always a privilege. Thanks.
It's a little better than the State House setup, right? Here at the Grand Hotel, it's not too bad, not too shabby.
Listen, it's beautiful here. This is one of my favorite places, and the Lord's creation is on display, so it's a beautiful spot.
Absolutely. Well, we come every year to BCA. You've been coming for probably 15 years, something like that. I did see a lot of senators in the hallways and everything, so students like you are well represented. What do you get out of a conference like this from a participant and as an attendee?
Well, you're right. I've been coming for about 15 years. I've been in the legislature for 14 years and was here before I was elected. That was my first trip to the BCA. we get a lot of participation because the time is very valuable. Just today, I've lost count of the number of meetings I've had with senators and other stakeholders, businesses and the like that are here for the conference. And we're talking about issues, talking about things we've accomplished, issues that were in the last session, topics that were associated with things that were important to them, as well as we've had some meetings with senators, just senators getting together. And we've done that traditionally at BCA, not like a full caucus meeting or anything like that, but just sitting around drinking coffee and having a chance to talk about things that are important to people in their particular districts and issues that are important to the people of Alabama. So it's a great conference to do that. It's a nice setting, very relaxed. So it's always a highlight every year for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate them allowing us to come and kind of highlight this, because it really is probably the biggest gathering of between federal, state, and of course business leaders as well. You mentioned issues. Probably the watchword of the last session was workforce development, workforce transformation. Y'all passed that slate of bills called Working for Alabama. You're starting to see some of those bills get implemented and things like that. Has that been a big topic here at BCA in terms of what was accomplished and maybe how it's going to be implemented?
It's been a big topic just because the workforce related themes, economic development, those kinds of elements are on the minds of all kinds of business owners throughout Alabama. Whether it's big businesses or small businesses, they're having trouble finding employees. Alabama's economy is still very strong. Doesn't mean that things aren't challenging from time to time, but one of the biggest problems that businesses are experiencing is finding qualified workers to be able to do jobs in their particular businesses. And that goes from high-end prospects, where I talked with someone earlier today that was talking about hiring accountants, and they were struggling with finding people that had qualifications, as well as I had a conversation earlier today with a business owner who was looking in manufacturing, and they were looking for just basic employees that would start with their business that they could train into a manufacturing post.
So it's across the spectrum.
Across the spectrum, a real challenge. But I'm excited about what Alabama's been doing on that. I told you I had coined a new thought and a new phrase that kind of helps me keep my ideas together on some things that we've been able to do in the legislature. But the 4 C's, like the number or the letter C, 4 C's of our economic future. And the first one is conservative. Alabama's legislature has been super conservative. Our budgets have been strong. Unlike other states that have spent every dime they get, we've filled up every rainy day account, added savings accounts, rolling reserves, those kinds of things. That's positioned the state to be in a really good place. Next is connectivity. Broadband internet access has been a huge focus. Alabama, in money from stakeholders, state money and federal money, we've spent $2 billion on broadband internet access. Alabama's gone from 47th to 24th in broadband access, which is a huge accomplishment.
Just in recent years?
Just in the last 3 years.
Wow.
So that's a big deal. We all know it doesn't matter if it's business or education or healthcare. If you can't connect to the internet, you got troubles. So that's a big one. I think the next one is convince. We've got the best incentives, in my opinion, of any state in the Southeast. We passed the game plan year before last. Those incentives are fully functional now, ready to go, and we're convincing the globe that where they ought to be is Alabama. We've got great workers, great people, a great way of life, a low cost of living, low taxes, growth in infrastructure with broadband and rebuild Alabama. We're the place you ought to come and invest your millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for your business. And so the Department of Commerce and others, they just returned from Europe on the air show, which Alabama is one of the largest producers of airliners in the world. These are things we can be proud of in the state of Alabama. And the 4th C is coordination. when you think about workforce and you think about economic development, efficiencies, effectiveness, and we're doing a lot of things in workforce and workforce training and those kinds of things, but those efforts are not really that coordinated. They're going to be because of what we did with Working for Alabama. You've got the new Growth Alliance that's going to be giving advice to the Department of Commerce. You've got the new department that's going to be between labor and portions of commerce that's coming together to focus all of our attention on what we do with workforce, making it be the best it can be. So those are things that we've been doing in the state of Alabama, things we can be proud of. They're already showing results, and there's more yet to come, more to be done, but we've been on the task, and I'm proud of the legislature, House and Senate, working with the governor to be able to get the job done.
4 C's. Okay, I like it when you break it down and make it kind of convenient to remember. Well, we're going to be following up on that, and we're out of time now, but I want to, when we get back to Montgomery, I want to have you back on because before too long, we're going to be back in the legislative session. I know y'all are planning for that, so we'll continue that conversation. But Senator, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Sounds great. Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
On July 8, 1860, the last known slave ship, Clotilda, sailed into Mobile Bay with 110 African men, women, and children on board. Following emancipation in 1866, many of these families established the settlement of Africatown, one of the first towns founded, continuously occupied, and controlled by blacks in the United States. Their descendants carried with them their ancestors' legacy, with some still living in the settlement today.
That's our show from here at the Grand in Point Clear, Alabama. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with Capitol Journal next week at the same time, right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.